people just kind of have this complacency where they say, well, that's just how it is. This is just a sign of the times. But you realize that the reason you will never get pushback for associating with a mobster is because who would do the pushing back? The people that push back against me are paid to do it. It's groups like the ADL, SPLC, Media Matters. And what are these groups? They're political nonprofits. They're not for-profit companies. And it's not, it's not a real business. They don't make stuff. They get paid by donors to look out for people that say the kinds of things that I say. And they're paid to stalk people like me, harass people like me, and ultimately spread lies. And you could see that with the ADL, SPLC, Media Matters. They do it about people like me or Kanye or Candace Owens, now you lately. Anybody that says, and it's, of course, it's interested. It's politically motivated. It's political actors putting up the money for political nonprofits, and they operate as the pain mechanisms, like a protection racket against the people that speak out. And once you realize that's what's going on, you realize it has a solution. You realize, like, there are flesh and blood people getting paid money by flesh and blood billionaires to attack other flesh and blood people for saying very specific things because it threatens their political interest. And that's the part that they don't want to get out. It's really that process because, the way that it's able to go on is people just think, someone like myself, well, I got canceled because I'm a bad guy. I sort of had it coming.
That's what they said, yeah.
Right? I had it coming. I said something, and they say, well, freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequences. You shouldn't have been controversial. But it's like you say, somebody like O.J. Simpson could kill a person.
And he still goes out, and people taking pictures with him.
Exactly.
And, oh, it's O.J. I can do an interview with O.J. No one will say anything.
Right, and no one will say, well, you shouldn't have killed somebody or something. But that's because killing people or being a mobster doesn't threaten the political interest. And therefore, the media, which is totally controlled, and these nonprofits.
By the same people.
Right, the whole thing, they're not coming after murderers, drug dealers, because that doesn't threaten the interest. And so, we really do live, people call it the Matrix. They talk about red pills. And what that's getting at fundamentally is that the world is a little bit more designed than we think it is. That's really, to get to the fundamental premise, the simplest form of the idea of the Matrix analogy. In the movie, The Matrix, they realize we're living in a simulation. We're realizing that it's a designed, created illusion, but everyone thinks it's just how things are. Everyone thinks, we just kind of were born into this and it's what it is. Yeah. And the analogy is that our world is very much like that. That we look at the world through a lens of media, movies, smartphones, and all of that is put on the screen by people, by very wealthy people, by connected people, and they're not putting they're not going to have the most integrity and do it with no filter, because that's a very big power to control the lens through which most people view the world. And it's a very certain type of person that I think is even psychologically equipped to look through that. You have to be a little bit disagreeable. You have to be observant. You have to be intelligent. You cannot be a nihilist. You have to be somebody that thinks that the truth matters enough to make sacrifice. And so, I know that's a lot to throw at you, but that is really why we're in this predicament.
Yeah, I also had these there were clearly organized groups going after all kinds of work I did. They would go to seminars. There would be like 50 people calling, everyone I work with. Thankfully, in the fight industry, and I mostly do business with my friends, I only had one thing canceled. It was a seminar, but it was with Nate Diaz, who publicly avoids politics. So I was pretty pissed, because I didn't want to cost him money. Right. But thankfully, I was able to book a seminar an hour later in a Muslim-owned gym, like 5 minutes away. So it was a big kind of fuck you to the Israeli guys that canceled it. So it's so I've seen the mobs myself. It's just I've been pretty fortunate with the people, and I think because I was in a position of power already when it happened, I've been harder to cancel. Yeah. Being self-employed. Hey guys, I'm a self-funded podcast, so if you want to support me and the work I'm doing, go to fightbackpodcast.com, and you can buy cool merch like the shirt I'm wearing about the Rhodesia Resistance. As many of you guys know, I run a free speech podcast. That comes as a price. It's being demonetized everywhere. So one way to support the podcast is to buy your books from AntelopeHillPublishing.com. Today's selection is the Trans Industrial Complex. This book covers the money-making machine of the trans industries and shows it's not to help people, but to make money and get rich. So again, if you want to support the podcast, go to AntelopeHillPublishing.com and be sure to use promo code FIGHTBACK. That'll save you money and support me. Thank you. What were the first things you said that started getting you canceled?
Well, the very first thing I said is that it's actually super ironic because everyone knows me as like a reactionary, super right-wing guy. But maybe literally the first thing I remember. I wrote a blog post because I had a very small blog, and it was in December 2016. It was actually defending Obama, believe it or not. And I don't like Obama. I don't think he was a good president. But one of the last things he did in office is there was a resolution in the Security Council in the United Nations, and it was condemning the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. And
clearly a good thing.
Right. It's a good, well, and not only is it something that I agreed with at the time, but also it's undeniable that that is official American policy since 1967. Republicans and Democrats, the official formal diplomatic posture of the United States is that we do not approve of the settlements. We consider them illegal. And so the resolution went to the floor on the Security Council. It's condemning the settlements. And the Obama administration instructed our ambassador not to veto it, because typically we veto those resolutions. United States, with the other P5s, permanent members, have veto power. And so typically we will sink and veto and banish any resolution, even if it would pass. But Obama declined to veto it, and he instructed the ambassador to abstain. And so it passed. And I remember, because I was a conservative, and I still am, I saw Shapiro and Daily Wire and Fox News, the whole right-wing media machine. They said Obama is the biggest Israel hater. He's an anti-Semite. He hates Jews. And I said, well, hang on a second. I'm like, whether you support what he did or he didn't, it's the official U.S. policy under Republicans, under Democrats. So what he's doing is what's in the interest of the United States of America. Maybe it's not in the interest of Israel. And the germ of the idea was that America's interests and Israel's interests aren't identical. And that's like a big, that's like a big revelation, because they kind of believe that, you know, and they may be similar, they may be very similar, but they're not identical because we're two separate countries. And you know, that actually means something. Like, America should have sovereignty and be able to conduct a foreign policy for the benefit of Americans first, not for other countries, whoever they are. And so that was really the germ of the idea. And in very short order, I started to ask the related questions, which are, why do we have to veto every resolution, even if it's against our interest? Why do we send them foreign aid? Why did we fight in Iraq? You know, and it really snowballed very quickly. And at that time, I was friends with all the Daily Wire writers. A lot of them were in Boston, where I went to school, and I knew them all. And I would ask them, you know, because you're in college, and that's actually the spirit of the right wing in politics, is open debate, the marketplace of ideas. So I would say to Cassie Dillon and Elliot Hamilton and Aaron Bandler, why do we give all this aid? Why did we go to Iraq? And so on. And they ran out of patience very quickly. You know, at first they kind of dismissed it. They were kind of glib. Oh, you can't talk about that. Oh, you're so controversial. But I kept pushing. I said, no, I want an answer. I'm America first, like Trump, because I was a big Trump guy. I said, I'm America first. I'm even more than I'm a conservative. I'm America first. And I said, I want an answer. And they said, well, you can't ask that ever again. And I said, well, that's a problem, because there's not an apparent answer that you know, kind of remedies this contradiction. And then they said, we can't do business with you anymore. We can't talk to you. And I have the screenshots. Cassie Dillon, I was very good friends with her. She literally texted me on Twitter one night. She said, verbatim, we can't be friends anymore. We're not in the same movement. You're in the alt-right.
America first.
Right? And then, but it got worse. So she blacklisted me. They all blocked me. People that I hung out with, was friends with, they all blocked me, would never talk to me. And then I got a call from my boss, because I was doing the show at that time for Right Side Broadcasting Network. Wasn't doing it independently. It's a guy named Joe Seals. And I got a call from him about a week later, and he goes, what's going on with you and Cassie? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, we haven't talked in a week. He goes, she's been calling me every day for the past 2 weeks, demanding that I cancel your show.
Wow.
And she was watching the show every night, and every little thing I said that was controversial, she would pick up the phone and say, you'll never guess what Nick just said. He said this, you got to take down the show.